Hi, welcome to Broker's Gym. I'm Jim, and this is my 10-pack review of the ZD Racing, also known as the RLAARLO p12. Let's see. So I ran my 10-pack today, and I'm going to tell you guys what I think about this chassis, some of the good things about it, some of the really strange things about it, and the parts that I broke. So let's just dive in here to the chassis here. So basically, when I got this vehicle, the first thing that I did is I ran it into a pole, like a sign pole, at full speed, and hit right about here, and just ripped this whole wheel off, broke the turnbuckle, and broke the A-arm right there, and then also broke the steering hub right there. Okay, but I slammed into it just going, super fast. It bent up the body and stuff too. It basically right there, it pushed in the whole headlamp and this whole fender all the way back and ripped that. And that was like 10 minutes into my first pack, right? So the cool thing about it is I was able to repair it. It just ripped them out, and it ripped them out clean, and you could barely even tell that they were broke. So I just epoxied them, and just in the meantime until the parts come. So that was my first pack. One of the first things that gave up on this car was the light kit. The light kit lasted about a half a pack, and all in all, the only thing it ever did was blink one of the blinkers, and I think maybe flashed the lights a couple times. But really, I took the light kit out, and it made for a lot cleaner chassis. And I'll just wait. If I come across the light kit that I like, or a receiver that has a light kit in it, well then, I'll go that route. But otherwise, I'm not missing it. I took off the exhaust too, because why use it if it doesn't work? And other than that, I don't think there's ever been any problems with this car at all. I'm really satisfied with it. It rips around. I'm going to show you guys some videos probably in between these clips. This is one of my first videos. It's actually my first review. It's not going to be like everybody else's review where I go over every part of the car. I'm just going to show my experience with it. And that's what it's been. It's got this car is fairly durable, but breaks at the knuckles. It's fast. It handles good, but it handles kind of in a dead fashion. Thing that I broke on this chassis was a few packs later after some pretty hard tumbles, but this seems to be kind of a weak spot, you know. I mean, it lasted pretty good, but now it's broke. I broke this rear knuckle there, and then I wrapped it with nylon thread and epoxied it to get it by, and this thing lasted until this last run. And so it lasted for like 6 runs, and it was really strong, kind of a fiberglass effect. But you can see now that right there where it's showing up really red there, that's where all the threads actually ripped. So it was holding it good until it ripped it. But still, I drove the last video with this breakage in it. The tires, okay, this is after 10 packs on the tires. That one's a little worn out right there. This one over here is less worn out because of the breakage. When I broke that, it was putting all the it was absorbing over here and it was spinning over here, so that caused that, because I was on an asphalt run. Now I spent the first 3 runs were on asphalt, and I noticed the tire wear and the breakage. And then after that, I've been sticking to a little bit of asphalt and mostly dirt and rock, off-roading it. But the tires seem to be holding up well. It's time for me to swap them. The wheels are incredibly strong. When that got ripped off, I was really surprised the wheel wasn't broken. Another thing that I wanted to talk about and review on this is the suspension. The suspension is unlike anything I've ever used before. Normally when I set up a suspension, I set it up to where it droops a little bit, in the back. You can let pressure off the shocks and it'll droop a little bit. So you push it down and then it'll spring back up. Well, this one doesn't seem to want to spring back up. Even if you add more pressure, you do this a little bit and work the chassis around, and it's still sprung. So like, it'll just sit just like that. And the front's even worse. The front, you push it down to the ground and it stays. And there is oil in the shocks, and there is, obviously you can see there's springs on there. Even when you jiggle this around, it doesn't raise. Okay, I'm used to having a floating suspension. This suspension is rather dead. You can see even now that it's lifted all the way up, I can still push this down more. And so there seems to be a little bit of binding somewhere in the chassis there. But the general suspension is dead. I don't know if it's because they use thicker oil. At some point I'm going to go through these and I'm going to make them like some regular shocks to where they'll rebound properly, and to where, you know, you'll be kind of floating in that center point of your suspension. Here it's so dead, it's either lifted or it's slammed. So I don't know, but all in all, the suspension seems to work pretty good. I noticed the car is hopping. It kind of hops over stuff, and that deadness, you can see it in the way that it runs. However, you know, it still tears it up. But I do think with a different suspension on there or some adjustments, that it'll still tear it up and it'll actually move along the ground quicker. In the front steering, we have a little bit of play. It seems to be a cumulative effect from all of the parts. But I think that a lot of it can be taken out through shimming, and like for instance, that one right there in the center, that one, it's a little sleeve, and that goes in the plastic, and then the screw goes in that. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of play between the size of the sleeve and the size of the screw. So I'm thinking I can coat the screw or the sleeve with nail polish or something, and take just a bit of that out. Now as you go down, I think one of the worst play spots is right here in that orange piece. When you look at it directly from the top, you can see it pushes around quite a bit. Okay, and then we also have play in the bending of the servo horn. It's just bending right there, and plus there's a little play. So I think if with a little bit of work and a little bit of trial and error, I can get this a lot tighter. I have had no problems with gears of any sort, any of the drivetrain. It's all worked flawlessly. However, a couple times, one time when I was, I was just holding the model in my hand and I was giving it some throttle. I gave it throttle and I let off, and the whole thing just went chunk and kind of like sounded like the gears were eating themselves, and it just stopped. So I gave it a few more triggers, and yeah, it just never did it anymore. And then another time it did a very similar thing, where I had it in my hand, pulled the trigger a couple times, let off, and it sounded like it was going to eat itself, but it didn't stop. So I also had the gears kind of binding once every revolution of the center drive shaft. So that would be, if it's once every revolution of the center drive shaft, then that would mean it's either in the spur gear or in one of the output gears to the diff. But I've never taken this apart to look at it or anything like that, and I've never done any repairs, and it still runs flawlessly. Even with all those kind of weird things with the gears. So my theory on this is I'm just going to leave it together and let it run until it actually eats something. Just because it sounds like it's going to eat something doesn't mean anything to me until it actually eats something. So when it actually eats something, I'll inspect it and then figure out if I need to shim the differentials or shim the output gears or what it is that I need to do. But at this point, 10 packs, it's been flawless. A lot of small stones seem to get lodged somewhere in the steering, but there's a lot of clearance under the arms, so I don't think it's in there. It's just somewhere else. Something gets caught, and then you lose your steering in the middle of a run if you're in an area that has lots of tiny rocks. Another place where a lot of tiny pebbles get stuck is right here in your suspension arms. They get caught right there where your grub screw is and cause your suspension to be compressed. So yeah, it's a little ripper. The ZD Racing RX12. It's also sold under a brand called Dikavey, Dikavey, and it's also sold as the RLAARLO XTS p12. There's a ton of parts that are available for this because of those different cars that use the same chassis. And there's also a BX12 that's compatible, MT14. Geez, there's a bunch of them. I think they're by that Jai Bell company or something. But you should be able to find parts for this no problem for a good while. So the big question, you know, is this car worth it? I'd say at this point, yeah, it's worth it. It hasn't ate the gears yet, and it hasn't broken anything that shouldn't break. So typical durability and stuff. It drives great. Yeah, I can't think of anything wrong with this car. I think this is the best $130 that you could spend on an RC car. And